Minions and Monsters is directed by Pierre Coffin and is the third installment in the Minions film series. This film follows the Minions in 1920s Hollywood as they search for frightening creatures for their monster movie. I know the Minions can be very divisive. Some people think they're insanely cute and others find them to be like nails on a chalkboard. I have always been part of the former camp. I love these characters. They're cute, they're silly, and even in the worst Despicable Me movies, they never fail to make me laugh. When it comes to the Minions solo movies, the first one completely lacks substance, but again, it makes me laugh. And I really enjoyed Minions: The Rise of Gru. I saw that movie twice opening weekend. My first viewing of that movie is genuinely one of my favourite cinema experiences I have ever had. My audience were cheering, clapping, they gave it a standing ovation at the end. So I can't lie, I was excited for Minions and Monsters. I think the best way to talk about this movie is by talking about it in two separate parts. Talking about the first half and talking about the second half. I am not joking when I say this. The first half of Minions and Monsters is absolutely fantastic. This is where the Minions find themselves in 1920s Hollywood and they essentially become obsessed with filmmaking. Straight up, Minions and Monsters is a love letter to Hollywood. One of the main Minions this film focuses on, James, he's shown at the beginning as being a very creative person but just isn't able to express that, and that side of the character is genuinely relatable. But I'm gonna be honest, I've always related to the Minions. I don't know how or why, I just have. And once the Minions find their way into Hollywood, James is able to unleash that creativity. There are gonna be kids and maybe even adults that watch this movie who are gonna be inspired by that. I think it's a fantastic message that not enough family movies explore, and the references to all things Hollywood in this movie are absolutely insane in the best way. I don't want to give away any of the gags, but there are some here where I'm just like, how has this film reference found its way into a Minions movie? Again, I loved all that. The film also makes some really interesting story choices, where it basically takes the Minions and rewrites Hollywood history with them, and I just thought that was brilliant. So the first half of this movie might just be the best thing Illumination has ever done. However, the second half of Minions and Monsters loses steam. This is right around the time we get introduced to Trey Parker's character Goomy. It is around this time that a group of the Minions begin looking for something. That's all I'll say without spoilers. And that part of the film, while it definitely has some laughs, ultimately begins to make it feel messy. There are characters here voiced by Jesse Eisenberg and Zoe Deutch, and their whole subplot just felt so out of place. It does nothing for the story and honestly completely slows down the momentum of the film. And then also when we get introduced to this little green character Goomy, the film tries to do way too much with his character and then characters he's involved with, and then all of this culminates in a third act that just doesn't work, to be honest. Bar the final 5 minutes, the film completely loses sight of what it was doing in the first half. Like, I genuinely did not recognise the movie I was watching anymore, and it just feels like the movie loses its identity, because the third act here is incredibly reminiscent of every Minions and Despicable Me movie you've seen. Overall, Minions and Monsters is a frustrating movie, because again, I loved that first half so much, but quite frankly, the second half just isn't able to capture that same magic. At the end of the day though, I do feel positively towards this movie generally, and I do think it is a movie that both kids and adults can get something out of. I'm going to give Minions and Monsters a B-. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video. You guys are awesome. Blu-ray Billy, logging off.